Hi everyone, this is Eric Thompson from Darlington Arts Center coming at you as for our tour for Delco Arts Week, and we're seeing my neighbor right now in Chad's Ford. I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Amanda Burdan from the Brandywine River Museum of Art. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I love the background. We're getting a little glimpse of the
Yeah,
of what we can speak on today. Thank you so much for joining us.
yeah.
Um, Dr. Burdan, would you mind just letting our friends know what your role is at the River Museum and what you've been doing over there?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I am a curator at the Brandywine, and I've been there for over 8 years now. And so my role there is to come up with the ideas for the exhibition, as well as take care of the art that's in our collection already. So in this past summer, and still going on right now, I've had a couple of exhibitions on view, even while we were closed for COVID, and made those virtual. So that was a new challenge for us. But we are open to the public again, so we're back to our wonderful in-person visits, and some of these exhibitions are still on view.
That's exciting. And we want to talk about one particular exhibition that you guys have featured this week. If we could just talk about the Witness to History with Stephen Somerstein, how that came about, how that idea came to you, and what was the process like?
Yeah, so the exhibition is called Witness to History. It's the Selma photography of Stephen Somerstein. It is photographs that all took place on the very last day. They were all taken on the very last day of the final march between Selma and Montgomery, Alabama in March of 1965. The reason we looked into having an exhibition like this, we don't do a lot of photography exhibitions, but it was to be a companion to an exhibition we had earlier this year called Votes for Women, A Visual History. So that exhibition was in commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. But of course, as we think about and understand how the 19th Amendment actually functioned, we know that a lot of people, a lot of women were left out of enfranchisement, even though the constitutional amendment had happened. And it took until 1965 with an act of legislation called the Voting Rights Act of 1965 for especially African-American citizens, especially in the South, to have access to the same voter registration and voting rights. And so this exhibition about this particular march is all about reaching out and asking for, demanding one's right to vote. So the two exhibitions about voting and voting history went together.
How appropriate for our current state of things going on in the country.
Yeah.
Was Stephen Somerstein, was he involved directly? How was it working with him?
Well, it was amazing. I don't get to, I'm an art historian, so I don't get to work with too many living artists. So
Right.
It's always fantastic when you can pick up the phone and call one and say, hey, when you did this image, what were you thinking? When you took this shot, how did you think it was going to turn out? And so I've had many hours of conversations with Stephen Somerstein, who's retired now. And I think the most fascinating thing that I learned about him was the fact that even though he took these photographs when he was a college student, when he was working for the City College newspaper in New York, he didn't go on to be a professional photographer or journalist or a documentary photographer. He's a physicist. He was involved with the Harvard-Smithsonian Astrophysics Lab and Lockheed Martin, and he had a full career in physics. And only after he retired did he start going back and looking at some of the things he's done, especially in photography over the years, and kind of brought these photos out of relative hiding after 50 years or more.
That's amazing. And it's a wonderful inspiration for many of us that have our day-to-day and then maybe take on the arts as a hobby. This is something that can come through.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, when I talked to him, he had always had an interest in photography, and he's taken photographs all his life, but hadn't considered himself, an artist in terms of getting a gallery or a deal or something like that. But, now in his retirement, he is an exhibiting artist.
That's amazing. And it's been 55 years since the Voting Rights Act and the march, and you mentioned the 100th anniversary of Votes for Women and the 19th Amendment. Was using was determining these collections, was it part of an intention to bring in a focus on social justice and the voting rights, especially in this year when we're in a pretty contentious election?
I know. This, that's the way election years work out, right? This 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. It's also the 150th anniversary of the 15th Amendment, which is the one that allowed African American men to vote. So it's a lot of anniversaries lining up here in a row. And, when I talk about Stephen Somerstein's exhibition, it's called Witness to History, and he talks about, and we'll talk about in a program, about his role in looking at history unfolding in front of him. And I think this is a great parallel to today, where we are literally all witnessing history, and it's through our television screens or our computer screens, sometimes in the real world this summer. And it was an intentional choice. As I said, we were celebrating the 19th Amendment, but wanting to make sure that its full story was understood, that Native American women didn't gain voting rights, that Chinese American women didn't gain voting rights, African American women had incredible obstacles to overcome. So it was a concerted effort to tell the main story of suffrage, but also bring new light to that, and then connect that to the 20th century and as it turned out, to our present moment in election and voting rights history.
Does the Brandywine have any intention to continue on this journey and marrying the arts with social justice in future exhibitions?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it's something we are just trying out, and it seems to have a great response. I mean, people that wouldn't necessarily be art museum goers are interested in a topic. And so one of the exhibitions that I'm working on for next summer will have an aspect of it that is about the use of the atomic bomb and the kind of deadly humanitarian situation that the invention of that atomic bomb brought. It's not the main thrust of the exhibition. It's an artist named Ralston Crawford, who worked for the military but was an artist. And so he faced these kind of challenges of making the war machine work, but then also witnessing firsthand the destruction that it brought with the nuclear bomb as part of his role in the military. So some of these questions are going to be coming up as well. And we're working on going through our collection and thinking more thoughtfully about, for instance, in the Andrew Wyeth galleries, there are a number of local African-American subjects that are pictured, but we've been looking at this object solely as works by Andrew Wyeth and not pieces of history of our local community. And so we're going to be, and we are doing the research to learn the lives of these Black residents around Chadds Ford and bring that to our label. So not just a special exhibition, but also in our regular gallery spaces, you'll be hearing different stories in the near future.
That's really exciting to know about. I look forward to all of these exhibitions and learning more about the art that's been up. Dr. Burdan, you're in a building on the daily that is wonderfully inspirational. I wonder if there's a section of the collection, or if there are a couple pieces that you just keep going back to kind of reflect during your day.
There is one corner of our first floor gallery that I kind of have made it my special mission to make it a rotating selection of women illustrators. Because of course, when you're in our galleries, you're really surrounded by some of the greatest works of illustrators, period. But the voices or the visuals of N.C. Wyeth and Howard Pyle tend to dominate. What's so fascinating is that Howard Pyle was very equalitarian when it came to teaching, and he taught many women artists. And so I've staked out this piece of real estate in the galleries to show the continuing story of women artists as they developed in this profession. And so when I go to that section, I'm often reminded that not only were these women struggling in the same ways to improve their artistic abilities and their talents and to get commissions and jobs that the men were doing, but it's a little bit like that that quote where it said Ginger Rogers does everything that Fred Astaire does, but she does it backwards in heels?
Yes.
Well, all these women artists were also facing the discrimination, the gender discrimination of that illustration marketplace and of the art educational world. So they had this sort of double-edged sword that they were working against, of getting their talent and their training up to the same level that was expected of men, and then also convincing the customer, so to speak, in the world of illustration, that they were able to do it as well. So I like to go there, and it's a little inspirational when, you know, my day's not going so well.
That's great. And now we can be on the lookout when we come to visit as well. Can you give a little plug? Do you have the hours that we can come visit the Brandywine?
Yes. So the Brandywine reopened to the public in July. We still have a really robust online program if you're not feeling comfortable yet. But we are open to the public every day but Tuesdays, and we open at 10 a.m. and we are open until 4 p.m. And you can go on our website or call our front desk and make reservations, because we do have limited admissions every day. So we have no more than 40 people in the whole museum. It's really like having a museum to yourself.
That's wonderful. And there's a beautiful outdoor space too, if you need to take in some nature as well. It's a wonderful space on the edge of Delaware County. Dr. Burdan, thank you so much for joining us today. Right after this, we're going to see a little snippet of the virtual conversation for Witness to History, which is available in its full capacity on delcoarts.org. And Dr. Burdan, how long is Witness to History open if we wanted to come to the museum?
Well, it closes on November 1st. And I'd like to think of that as almost right up until Election Day. Yes, so if you're thinking about voting, go see this. You'll be inspired.
Excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you for all the work that you're doing to bring this to light.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.